Okay, so I think we'll get started now. So first off, thank you everyone for coming. Today we'll be talking first about inclusive leadership and extreme ownership. And so in terms of inclusive environments, at camp, all counselors will be expected to create an inclusive environment amongst campers. And we can do that by creating an inclusive environment with our counselors and members. So even though the session is used to be solely for returning counselors, we know that everybody own the ability to make or participate in an inclusive environment and to hold each other accountable through that. And so this is why we're all here today, returning and new counselors. And yeah, we are basically going to just discuss that a little bit more. Okay, so how can we utilize having like essentially an inclusive environment and holding each other accountable at camp? We can start by acknowledging that campers will be in the same scenario as us. And so there are campers who have been to camp since they were 6 years old, and some that will not know anyone when they come this year. So we need to basically figure out how we can instill an inclusive environment and use inclusive leadership in those situations. And to do that, we're going to be doing some scenarios towards the end of this slideshow. Another aspect we're going to be talking about is extreme ownership. And extreme ownership is the practice of owning everything in your world to an extreme degree. So it means that you're responsible for not just those tasks which you directly control, but for all those that affect whether or not your mission is successful. And in this case, your world is your role as a counselor. So your mission is the week of camp. And we expect that you know your role, own your role, and proactively ensure that your role is covered and take responsibility when you make mistakes. In a simple example, here's what we mean. Let's say there's an all camp activity, scuba, who is a counselor of the A unit, sees two boys of the B unit wander off into the woods. Sure, it's not in Scuba's direct job description to take care of the boys in the B unit, but they are at an all camp activity to ensure camp is successful, Scuba needs to keep these campers safe. That is extreme ownership of this position. He also needs to let the B unit counselors know of this, talk to the boys he saw about it, and make sure the unit leaders know. So yeah, that's kind of just a little bit of an example of like what it means to have extreme ownership. And so we're going to be talking about some of the, oh, actually, let's first talk about the why behind implementing extreme ownership. The pandemic put CASM into a virtual space for 2 and more years, and historical knowledge was lost. Less people had been to camp, and knowing how to perform their role was new to basically everyone. Last year, at all camps over the US, there was this lack of confidence and ability to perform the task at hand. And there was confusion, and without inclusive, full leadership and extreme ownership at the forefront of our volunteers, we faltered in being prepared to support our campers. So I want to first share this document that basically just goes over the different duties of various positions. And it'd be great if you guys can look this over. You have to look at it right now, but just it'd be great if you could just open it on your computer and then look it over when you have the time, because it does go over what you would be expected to do at camp. So let me just make a copy of it. So I just put it in the chat. So it'd be awesome if you guys can please open it on your computers and look at it either after this meeting or whenever you guys are available. So next thing we'll be doing is sharing a couple of scenarios and having people put in the chat what they would do in these various scenarios. So the first one is it's lunchtime. A counselor realizes no one did bed checks for their unit this morning. What steps need to be taken? So could we please write it in the chat? Okay, so I'm seeing answers in the chat. So communicate with other counselors privately and delegate the job to one counselor. If possible, counselor can do vet checks or delegate vet checks to unavailable counselor. One of the counselors can go back to the cabin and do the vet checks. Communicate with other counselors privately and delegate the job to one counselor. Great. Inform other counselors in your unit that you will stop. Yeah, exactly. These are all really great answers. Okay, so another scenario is that a counselor notices that their unit leader hasn't been carrying around their walkie all day. So what steps should be taken? And it'd be awesome if you guys can please put it in the chat.
Buttercup, I think you're muted.
Thank you for that, actually.
It's okay.
So basically what I was saying is that um, you'll find a lot of times you'll be in your unit and become comfortable with what you're overseeing, your role, and who you're responsible for. But during group transition times, meals, or activities, these roles will change, and you will need to figure out how to take extreme ownership for not only your kids, but the kids that are around you. So thinking about things like cabin time, transition time, and all group activities, it's important to take some ownership during roles like this, where sometimes you may notice that like you're gonna have some campers that are doing separate activity like friendship bracelets during transition time if it's just taking too long. So you would need to become that counselor and make sure to let the unit leader as well as the admin know and come up with a plan for next time. So this is the end of the slideshow, but it'd be awesome if you guys could put in the chat what is one idea of how you are personally going to take initiative and being inclusive within your counselor group. Frequently check in with other counselors to see if they need any support for situations arise. Yes, I agree. That's great. Keep each other updated about anything that happens. Yes, exactly. Awesome. So next, we will be going on to the next slideshow, which is putting it together. So let me share that. So basically, what's going to happen is I'm going to read a bunch of scenarios out, and there's going to be a base situation and then two adjustments to that base situation. So you'd ask how you would handle the scenario when working with older versus younger campers, and working in a group versus an individual. And so it'd be awesome if in your answers in the chat you could write like to every situation A, and then write like okay, one parentheses, and then say the answer, B, and then say the answer, just so that I could get an idea of how you're going to be able to deal with working with older versus younger campers and working in a group versus an individual. And yeah, I expect you to address all these scenarios with an inclusion and equity mindset and extreme ownership of your role. So the rest of these are going to be just scenarios. So I'm going to share a different screen to show the scenario. Okay. So the first scenario is regarding childcare. You notice that a camper in your unit has not touched their food at lunch. You walk up to the camper and ask them why they haven't eaten yet. The camper expresses that they don't like any of the food at camp and actually haven't eaten for the last 2 meals. What do you do? So it'd be awesome if you guys could write like A and then like say what you do, and then B, say what you do. And we're going to go over all the scenarios first. There's, I believe, 4 scenarios. And then we're going to go over how, like some ideas as to how you should address them based on the mindset that Kesem wants you to have. So yeah, we also maybe you guys could put it in the chat, like just how you would deal with the situation with A and B. So like A being younger versus older, and B being group versus individual. And you'll notice that in the bullet, the second bullet kind of addresses that, where it's like first just that camper, and then what if it's a bunch of other campers that now are also not eating? Um, right. So ask them. what or how they normally eat at home, and if it can be arranged, let them talk with the cooks about options, and then tell them this is a special scenario. Yep, these are really great answers. So the next scenario is addressing grief or loss. So you're spending time in your cabin during rest hour with campers in your unit. You're speaking to a camper when they start to talk about their caregiver's cancer diagnosis. You're familiar with the diagnosis, and it's clear that the camper has limited information about their caregiver's situation. They ask you if you know anything about their caregiver's diagnosis. How do you respond? And same concept with A being younger or older, and B being what if other campers join the conversation? And one camper says another, isn't it great that your parent is in remission? How do you handle the group dynamic and unpack this statement? You can choose to work through the scenario with younger or older campers. Can we please get like an answer in the chat, like even if it's just one, so we can, yeah, thank you. So for either age, you don't disclose any additional information. Talk about how the situation is making them feel instead. Pull the first camper aside and continue the conversation privately. Yes. So making sure that you yourself are not getting involved in how much they know, and you're not distorting whatever image they have of their parents' diagnosis. Yes, exactly. Yep. So making sure to emphasize empathy in all the campers, and making sure to also listen more than you talk. So another scenario is regarding camper behaviors. So two campers in your unit are siblings, and they're constantly in conflict with one another. And one day you notice that they're involved in a heated argument on the basketball court. One camper grabs a basketball out of their sibling's hand, and suddenly the situation escalates. You intervene, and the siblings explain that they act like this all the time at home. How do you respond if the camper is younger and older? And what if it happens around the entire unit? How do you address the group? So making sure that like this behavior is not like making sure you inform the campers this behavior isn't acceptable, even if it is acceptable at home. The last scenario is regarding communication. So you're trying to have fun at camp, but you're struggling communicating with your unit leader. You feel like every time you either try to express a concern or propose an idea, they immediately dismiss you. What would you do? So what if talking with the unit leader directly doesn't work, and what if a disagreement between you and your unit leader happens in front of a group of campers? So for this, you can just write A and B, and I would understand that you're addressing the first and second question, not like campers older versus younger and group versus individual. Okay, so here's a concern with admin, trying to talk through my issues, yet keeping the discussion screen, avoiding escalating behaviors or to outlet their disagreement. Became advisor and admin. Yes, I agree. These are all good examples of how we address the situation. So I'll just be discussing some things that Kesem advises us to do in situations. So number one, for the childcare situation, it's important to ask the camper how they're feeling about eating at lunch specifically. While they may genuinely dislike the food, it's possible that not eating is a communication of an emotional feeling that they're having, like homesickness or sadness. And make sure that the camper isn't feeling physically sick. Sometimes avoiding food could be a sign of illness. So ultimately, the camper must feed themselves, and it's our responsibility to make sure they're doing so. So if these tactics don't work, you should communicate with your unit leader, camp advisor, or director, and we'll need to call home if the camper misses more than 2 meals in a row. The second scenario, addressing grief or loss, it can be really challenging to have conversations about cancer when we oftentimes have a very personal connection to the mission of KESM. But make sure that you're mirroring the language that campers use to describe their parents' diagnosis and never never correct or educate them. So also it's important that you reflect and empathize. So shift the conversation back to the camper. Talk phrases like, thank you very much for sharing that information with me. It sounds like your caregiver has told you a little bit about what they've been experiencing. How does that make you feel? I'm so sorry. I don't know how much you do. I don't know much more than you do about what's going on in your family. It sounds like your caregivers have told you about what has been going on. How does what they've told you make you feel, etc. And then camper behaviors, explain that you understand sometimes it's hard to adjust to new rules and norms when you're outside of your home, but this at camp is not tolerable. And explain that while you understand siblings might be joking around, they know each other really well. Other campers may not know that they have this close relationship and may be concerned or frightened by that behavior, or maybe influenced by it. And so if the behavior continues, loop in your unit leader, camp advisor, or director for potential behavior plan. And lastly, for communication, try out a situation directly. If you feel comfortable, loop in your director or camp advisor, and they can help you navigate the situation, which is what you guys were saying. Express your feelings and impressions using I statements. And if you address issues in communication early, your week of camp will feel much more fun. So try to address as early as you can the problem that you feel like you're having or the tension that you feel like is present. Um, so yeah, that is actually all we have for training today. If you've missed any trainings, please submit a 150-word reflection of the training that you missed, like essentially a reflection of it by Friday, July 12th. We've been sending out the recordings of every training, so those are all available to you guys. If not, please email us. We're happy to send them again. But yeah, that is all. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.